Chapter 36. It was a 6.5-hour flight from East Coast to West. Between the nights spent at home and being cooped up in one of Bruce's private jets so long, Cassandra felt like her bones were turning to dust. She swore she'd make it a point to walk whenever possible while she was away, and spar if a willing participant was available. It was all she could hope for. She was strictly forbidden from bringing her uniform in her suitcase. Connor stood waiting just past the gate that surrounded the landing strip. The recent events left Cassandra so exhausted, she thought she might fall asleep as soon as he wrapped his arms around her.
"Hey," she said. "Missed you."
"You too," Connor said. They remained still for a moment. When a breeze passed, they both shuddered just a little. California always felt warmer than Gotham, but fall was still fall. "Let me get your luggage." Connor released her, rolled the suitcase around to the back of the Prius, and popped the trunk. "You look tired. Should we save sightseeing for another day?"
"No," Cassandra said. "Not that tired. Want to see."
"All right." Connor shut the trunk. "I'm feeling hungry, so I guess food is the first priority. I know a little place around here. You like Chinese?" Cassandra broke into a tiny laugh. "Don't assume it's obvious," Connor said. "Dina loves Thai food a lot more than I do." Star City appeared to be the kind of place Gotham always aspired to become. Artisan shops lined both sides of the street. People covered the sidewalk, but no one seemed to be in a hurry, and the air smelled cleaner than it should have with all the cars on the street. Gotham could never look so pleasant. The two sat quietly as Connor seemed to pass an unseen threshold into the city proper. He drove them down steep hills that felt like roller coaster drops, and past dozens of interconnected townhouses. In spite of herself, Cassandra leaned back in the chair and shut her eyes. Connor took in a deep breath before he spoke again. "Listen, I don't know everything about what's gone on since I left. Bruce told my dad some things. Most of what I know I learned secondhand from him. If there's anything you need to talk to me about, don't be afraid to do so." A small smile crept across Cassandra's face.
"Thank you."
The hills only evened out when Connor neared sea level. Waves from the Pacific Ocean beat against the sand, and beachgoers were audible even with the windows rolled up. Connor turned into a small restaurant across from the beach, identified by a string of writing in Mandarin and the name Dong Bay. Cassandra followed him inside. A few couples, 2 lone diners, and 1 family were dispersed around the restaurant. A heavy-set clerk across the room looked up when the bell attached to the door rang, and she flashed a big smile. "Connor!" Though her accent put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, her enthusiasm was genuine. "Welcome. Sit." "Well, if you doubted I was a regular, Jade just proved it." Connor sat down in a booth near the entrance. Cassandra was quick to follow. Little paper lanterns hung down from the ceiling over every table, and the walls were covered in paintings of animal people plowing or harvesting fields. It looked to Cassandra at least a little more authentic than the tea house she and Stephanie argued in. The woman from across the restaurant, Jade, set down a pair of teacups, bags, and a kettle of hot water on the table. She only brought 1 menu, which she handed to Cassandra. "I order the same thing every time I come in." Connor turned to the server. "But don't get it started until she orders." The way he pointed and held his hands straight but flat, and the server's nod suggested she understood the request, if not the words. Cassandra scanned the menu. "What do you like?" "Green curry sauce and noodles, but I don't eat meat," Connor said. Cassandra nodded and scanned the menu. The English writing was limited compared to the lines upon lines of Mandarin, but there were lots of pictures and she understood enough of what was described. When a few minutes passed, Cassandra pointed to a roasted pork and rice dish with relative confidence at what she was ordering, and the server nodded as if she understood. None of the conversations around the rest of the building reached them. They felt almost as if they were alone. Connor didn't say much, but he did watch Cassandra carefully with every sip of tea she drank. But Connor had always been considerate more than anything else. He understood Cassandra spoke little, had recently come off a long flight, and was struggling with thoughts in the back of her head. He didn't wish to burden her with a request she choose words for conversation. A memory stuck out in Cassandra's mind, though she didn't know why. It was of an art center in downtown Gotham. One of many recollections she tried to suppress, but it came in clear. It was at the start of January, just a little before her birthday. The Seraphim was finally defeated. Gotham was back on its way to a lull of relative peace. And after much contemplation, Cassandra dialed a phone number on a too well-preserved piece of paper towel from the hospital. She didn't know the first thing about painting, but when Stephanie suggested classes were available downtown and she could use it as a date idea, Cassandra latched right onto it. The activity itself didn't matter so much. Her partner that day was far more talkative than Connor, but Cassandra didn't mind. She didn't even care that she could only understand perhaps half of what was said to her by the instructor or that other person. The memory wasn't so much bad as tainted, and that meant it was worth avoiding. Despite all her efforts, Cassandra did carry over that feeling. It felt meaningful. She tested a phrase out on her tongue over and over again, but couldn't make it come out. She wasn't sure he could sense how much she was struggling in her head or not. The minutes ticked by as they sat in silence. Cassandra insisted to herself she should just say it. She just had to swallow the nerve and say it. So, is this a day... There you go. Jade returned right as the words slipped from Cassandra's mouth and set their 2 plates in front of them. Connor lowered his head to her. "Zizi Nin," he said. He looked to Cassandra as the waitress walked away. "Sorry, what did you say? I didn't catch that." Cassandra did everything she could to keep the blood from rushing to her cheeks as she turned her attention toward the meat and rice. Nothing. She would be in Star City for the foreseeable future. There was no need to rush the question. Connor didn't press the matter. Cassandra clasped her hands and said a short grace before she dug in. Both ate their lunch in mostly undisturbed silence, and Cassandra agreed with Connor's endorsement of the restaurant. When their bowls were clean, Jade quickly whisked them away and presented Connor with the bill and a pair of fortune cookies. Connor cracked open his own and handed over a credit card. He studied it for a few seconds before he muttered, "You are an inspiration to those around you." "That is a statement, not a fortune." "But a compliment." Cassandra broke open her own. "Still isn't a fortune. You want me to read that for you? Just in case?" Cassandra passed it to him, more to honor the offer than any fear of her own inability. "Life is short, or to desert. That's advice. It isn't a fortune either. And isn't the cookie itself supposed to be dessert?" Cassandra laughed. Though she wasn't totally sure she understood, it felt like Connor earned it. "But we can follow it anyway. There's a place I like a couple blocks from here. You okay to walk?" "Dying to." The two soon rose from the little restaurant booth and worked their way up the sidewalk's gradual incline behind the restaurant. Cassandra's pace was slowed by the meal she'd eaten and the long hours of travel, but Connor adjusted his own speed to stay near her. A few times Cassandra considered taking a step closer and bumping her hand against his own, just to see if he would react, but after the interruption at lunch, she felt too afraid to try. For the moment, it seemed better to just focus on putting one foot in front of the other. At the end of a short trek, just at the top of one of the small hills, a Ghirardelli chocolate shop came into view. By the way Connor's pace picked up, it was clear this was the place he was talking about. The Ghirardelli shop was a far cry from the calm and quiet of Dong Bai's. From Connor's first move inside, Cassandra picked up lots of talk between parents and children. The smell of chocolate seemed almost baked into the walls, which were covered with all sorts of advertisements and statements about the newest candy on the shelves. At the center of the store stood a counter, behind which stood a tall, busty Latina woman, maybe in her 20s or 30s, flanked on both sides by freezers filled with scoopable ice cream. She too beamed as Connor approached. "Well, look who it is." Her voice was maybe a little gruff, but warm nonetheless. "How are you today? Did you come for the usual?" "Only if you don't have another flavor that's both chocolatey and vegan." Connor and the woman both laughed as he raised a hand toward Cassandra. "I'm entertaining a friend from out of state, so please be on your best behavior." "Oh, please. You tip me too well for me to do anything else." A chuckle escaped Connor as he ushered Cassandra forward. "This is my friend, Cassandra. Cassandra, this is Lupe. She's my favorite server out here." Cassandra tried to match the enthusiastic smile on Lupe's face. "Hello." "Well, hi there, Cassandra." Lupe raised her arms and referred to the freezers at her sides. I'll make you cones, sundaes, malts, whatever you want. Let me know if you want a taste of anything first. I've got sample spoons. And don't take any of Connor's recommendations. You don't get a figure like mine by giving up dairy products." Connor burst into a laugh, and Cassandra gave her a giggle. There was still so much on her mind, so many thoughts she forced below the surface. But there, in her first afternoon in Star City, she felt more at ease than she had in months. Maybe things would work themselves out, after all.